What's going on, guys? Welcome in to the all-new Women's Basketball Rundown. I am Kadarius Washington, and it is a pleasure to have you in. Now, this rundown is obviously taking place of the Unrivaled rundown because I want to cover the game of women's basketball in a broader level, including college and the W, not just Unrivaled. But nevertheless, it's a pleasure to have you in. And I know it's only 2 weeks left of the Unrivaled season, but I decided to go ahead and change the format because, in fairness, only 3 of you people actually watch this crap anyway. So, figure it's best to go ahead and change this thing while I can get away with it. But nevertheless, it's a pleasure to have you in. So, I want to get into the WNBA, and a pretty significant trade went down on Sunday, I believe. So the Chicago Sky traded the number 3 overall pick, a first round pick swap in 2027, and a second rounder in 2027 for Washington Mystics point guard Ariel Atkins. Now, I want to take a closer look at this trade. So, from the Mystics standpoint, they virtually cleaned house completely. Atkins was the last player from the 2019 championship team, assuming that Alina Deladon doesn't come back. So this is a full-on rebuild for the Washington Mystics. And they're in a pretty good position this year. Because right now they have the number 3, number 4, and the number 6 picks in this upcoming draft. And they just drafted Aaliyah Edwards last year with their first round selection. And so far that's turned out very well for the Mystics. Well, Edwards has turned out well. She's a pretty good player. And the Mystics, of course, are building towards the future as Brittany Sky, Stephanie Dolson, and Carly Samuelson are all scheduled to be free agents this offseason. So, yeah, they're in a rebuild position, but they're definitely in a good position for the future. And you can say early on paper that the Mystics won this trade. Now, taking a look at the Chicago Sky, you would have to think that after this trade that it's pretty much win now mode for the Sky. Now, personally, I think it may be a little too early for them, but there might be something going on in that clubhouse we might not know about. There are a certain belief that they are contenders. So a move like this pretty much solidified that for what it's worth. And with this Atkins move, it completed the 2 things that I was looking for the Chicago Sky to do this offseason, which was number 1, improve their guard play, and number 2, get some veteran leadership. And they got that now with Atkins and, of course, with the Courtney Vandersloot signing from a couple of weeks ago. But here's kind of where things get murky for Chicago. They give up the number 3 pick in this year's draft. I believe they still have the 10th pick, if I'm not mistaken. But they give up the number 3 pick. Now, if you want to say that, fear of uncertainty, fine. Because that's kind of what the LA Sparks did with the whole Kelsey Plum trade. Because they ended up trading that number 2 pick because of uncertainty. Because they didn't know whether or not Olivia Miles was going to declare, and currently we still don't know. Just like how the number 3 pick, there's a lot of uncertainty there. So you can definitely look at it from that perspective. Giving up the second round pick in 2027. Now here's where it really gets dicey. A first round pick swap in 2027. And you're wondering, well, why is that significant? Because look at the names that are expected to go pro in 2027. Juju Watkins, Hannah Hidalgo, Talasia Cooper from Tennessee, Audie Crooks from Iowa State, and Mylasia Fawiley, I believe, from South Carolina. Now, mind you, this is not the first time historically the Sky have had a draft situation like this? Because in 2018, they had the number 4 overall pick, and they passed on Arike Ogunbowale and Nafisa Collier for Katie Lou Samuelson. And long story short, Samuelson only lasted for 1 season in Chicago. They trade her to the Dallas Wings for Azurá Stevens, and 2 years later, the Chicago Sky wins the WNBA title. Personally, I really don't think that lightning is going to strike twice. I don't think we're going to see much of a repeat where in about 2-3 years' time, the Chicago Sky are lifting the WNBA trophy. But I do think that this move at the same time does make Chicago better. And what Angel Reese and Camila Cardoso have done developing their games in the offseason cannot be undermined. But I will say this. If this kind of experiment fails, because Ariel Atkins is scheduled to be a free agent at the end of the season. So if this thing blows up and Courtney Vandersloot shows her age, worst case scenario, and the Chicago Sky is in a worse position in 2027 than they are right now, then they could be closer to another rebuild than another championship. And their GM, Jeff Pagalaga or something like that, is going to get fired because people are going to look at this as a negligent trade. And mind you, the Sky have made some very questionable decisions a lot, and sometimes their hand even got forced, just like how they were forced to trade Kalia Copper because she demanded out, and then Marina Mabry forced her way out. So Chicago has been making a lot of questionable decisions in the front office, but honestly, I have mixed feelings about this. Like, on one hand, like I said, it gives them the veteran leadership. It improves the team, but at the same time, I mean, isn't it a little bit ahead of schedule? Like, shouldn't you probably focus on the draft? I mean, especially with this draft class coming out with everybody, should they declare? So I wanted to get to that in the W. Let's get into the college basketball. So on Sunday, the game of the day, NC State upset the then number 1 ranked Notre Dame Fighting Irish in a crazy double overtime thriller. And a thing about NC State, I'm going to take a closer look at NC State. So for the Wolfpack, all their starters scored in double digits. Zoe Brooks had 33 points, 10 rebounds, shot 45% from the field, and 14 for 14 from the free throw line. Isaiah James, the 757 product, Virginia Beach's very own, she had 20 points, 5 rebounds, and shot 42% from the field, and was great defensively, especially during the overtime periods. And Tilda Triger and Sanaya Rivers came up absolutely huge in the game for the Wolfpack, and they pretty much just overpowered Notre Dame. Like, it's all there is to it. And a little interesting stat about Isaiah James, and shout out to James Catato over at Wavy for pointing this out. In the month of February, Isaiah James has averaged 21 points a game, shooting 54% from the field, and every team except for one that they've played this month is a ranked team. And I think, especially after a performance like this, and if she's incredible in the NCAA tournament, I think Isaiah James can easily play her way into being a top 10 pick in the draft. Because Isaiah James, so far in this stretch, has been so much fun to watch. I am a huge fan of her game. And the Wolfpack has been sensational throughout this stretch of games. And Notre Dame, like I said, they pretty much just ran out of gas in the second overtime. Sonia Citron, who I believe is going to be a lottery pick, top 3 pick, she hit a crazy 3 as time expired in regulation to send the game into overtime. But after that, Hannah Hidalgo and Olivia Miles both got in foul trouble late in the game, and Hannah Hidalgo went rogue in the game. I mean, that's all really you can say about it. And one thing about Hidalgo, I love Hannah Hidalgo. She's one of my favorite players to watch in all of women's basketball. She is extremely electric. But she has a tendency, way too often in my opinion, to go rogue. I mean, in this game, she shot 30% from the field, and she was making a lot of very questionable decisions in the game. A lot of bad shots and a lot of non-basketball IQ moments. And there were several times this season where Hannah Hidalgo did this exact same thing. And if there was ever a game where she probably needed to be benched for it, it was probably this one. Now, let me use this as an example. Just like early in the season for South Carolina and Mylasia Fawiley, when people were getting on Dawn Staley for putting Mylasia Fawiley on the bench when she went rogue in the big games. But look at how Mylasia's playing in the second half of the year. She's much more consistent. I mean, she's making a lot better decisions. I mean, this is something that probably should have happened with Hannah Hidalgo. Like, there are countless times throughout this season, well, a few times anyway, where you could argue that she probably should have been benched and let Olivia Miles do what she's supposed to do and take control of the floor. Because Miles is the general of that team. Now, my mind, when I think of Hidalgo going rogue, my mind immediately goes back to the Sweet 16 in 2024 when Notre Dame lost to Oregon State, and Hannah Hidalgo was doing things that a guard at 5'6" really should have had no business doing. Like a lot of questionable shots and driving in the paint when getting double and triple teamed by bigs. Like Hannah Hidalgo, whenever she plays hero ball, that sets Notre Dame up for trouble. And Olivia Miles is an exempt because she went rogue in the game too, shooting 39% from the field. And one more thing I'm going to say about Hidalgo. Yes, she's electric. Yes, she's fun to watch. But she also has a domino effect to her. If she goes rogue and causes Olivia Miles to go rogue and shots are ultimately not falling, Notre Dame could be in trouble. They could be in trouble, and they may not make that deep of a run as we thought in the NCAA tournament. Another game that I want to get to is UCLA and Iowa, which was a crazy close game. And I got to say this. I've probably said this before, but I'm going to say this again. I think right now, UCLA is on fraud watch. Because this was a game where you could argue that if Lauren Betts did not play this game, UCLA probably loses. I mean, she was pretty much the only proficient player for UCLA in this game. And Kiki Rice, outside of the fourth quarter, was effectively a non-factor. I mean, in the fourth quarter, she hit a clutch shot late in the game. I think it was a 3. But outside of that, Lauren Betts, she doesn't play. They lose because Iowa led 36-29 at the half. And Iowa led by as much as 12 in the game. And Iowa, I will say this. They are a very fun and scrappy team. And I think if they make the NCAA tournament, they could be a very interesting team to watch. So that's one that I want to get to as far as the college basketball. And another game is North Carolina and Louisville, as North Carolina barely escaped this game, 79-75, and Louisville, for the most part, has played extremely well in this stretch, but their foot was on Carolina's neck, and the defense effectively disappeared in the second half. And they had chances late to tie the game and potentially win the game, but they didn't capitalize. But Louisville is another scrappy team that I'm going to have my eye on as we get to the ACC tournament and, of course, the NCAA tournament, because they have quite a couple of players there who I really enjoy watching. I really enjoy Louisville's game, and hopefully they don't lose to a team like Middle Tennessee this time, like they did last year when they got ousted in the first round. And another storyline from college basketball is UConn's Caroline Ducarme, who returned for the first time in 15 months in their win against Butler on Saturday. And another note about Butler, it was their first sellout women's basketball game in school history. And from what I've heard and what I've seen online, there were a lot of fans that were lined up to see Beckers and the UConn squad from before the game started all the way until UConn left to go to the buses. So that's an incredible story there and a growth for the women's game. And we have a new number one ranked team in the AP poll, and that's Texas. And honestly, last week, I thought Texas probably should have been the number one ranked team. But then I saw Notre Dame's resume and the head-to-head wins that they had over UConn and USC, and I said, okay, good resume. But nevertheless, Texas is the number one ranked team, their first number one ranking since 2004, and this is the fourth time this year that we had a change in the number one ranking, which is the most since the AP began ranking women's basketball in the 1976-77 season. And Texas had an interesting game last night against Georgia, where they only led 20-16 at the half. So offense really not getting it going in the game. And then they ended up outscoring Georgia 37-10 in the second half for the 57-26 win. And to round out the rest of the top 10, UCLA jumped to number 2. Notre Dame falls to number 3. USC stayed at 4. UConn stayed at 5. South Carolina stayed at 6. LSU stayed at 7. UNC, North Carolina, went up to number 8. NC State jumps up to the number 9. And TCU rounds out the top 10 at number 10. And another note about the rankings, Florida State and Louisville are in, and Georgia Tech and Illinois fall out of the rating. But I'm really interested to see what this Texas team has as we get into the NCAA tournament. Now, I do have a couple of questions on Texas and, of course, getting it going and getting in a rhythm. But Texas is one of the few teams in women's college basketball who you can make a legitimate case for them to win it all. So I'm really going to have my eye on this Texas team as we go ahead in the SEC tournament and, of course, the NCAA tournament. And another thing that I find interesting, too, is that because Texas and South Carolina split their regular season series and the whole tiebreaker situation, if South Carolina and Texas win out, then the 1 seed in the SEC tournament is going to get decided by a coin flip. So we're doing it old school there, where we're deciding, the number 1 and number 2 seeds in the SEC tournament by a coin flip. So that's something that I found very interesting. And ahead of tomorrow and Thursday, we have a total of six matchups going against ranked teams. Only one on Wednesday is 23 ranked Michigan State taking on number 12 ranked Ohio State. And then on Thursday, we have 22 ranked Creighton taking on number 5 UConn, number 8 North Carolina taking on number 16 Duke, number 24 ranked Florida State taking on third ranked Notre Dame. And this is where I think is going to be the game of the night in women's college basketball. Number 11 ranked Tennessee taking on number 15 ranked Kentucky. Two teams who are extremely fun to watch. And I'm definitely going to be paying attention to those games. The UNC Duke game, the Florida State Notre Dame game, and especially the Tennessee and Kentucky game. And then we have number 7 ranked LSU taking on 20th ranked Alabama. And we got some bracketology today. We got some new bracketology. I'm going to give you the first 4 seeds because that's what I'm really the most interested in. So the number 1 seeds, the number 1 overall seed is UCLA, followed by Texas, South Carolina, and Notre Dame. Number 2 seeds, LSU, NC State, UConn, and USC. Number 3 seeds are North Carolina, TCU, Duke, and Kentucky. And then Tennessee, Ohio State, Kansas State, and Oklahoma State round out the 4 seeds. So I honestly like this. I really don't have much of a problem with it. But it's going to be very fun as we get into this last week of the college basketball regular season and, of course, getting into conference championship play. All right, let's get into the Unrivaled. Another weekend of Unrivaled is in the books. We have 2 more weekends left of the Unrivaled regular season before we get to the semifinal and the championship. And the Lunar Owls suffer their first loss of the season this weekend at the hands of the Rose. That was a pretty big storyline. And, of course, Chelsea Gray and Angel Reese having huge weekends that we're going to get into in a little bit. So the standings for Unrivaled, Lunar Owls, 9-1. They clinched the first playoff spot in the Unrivaled field. And then you have Rose, who have gotten extremely hot. And I think they're on a 4 or 5 game winning streak. They're at 6-4. Lace is currently at 5-5. Vinyl at 4-6. And then the Mist and the Phantom each have 3-7 records. But looking at the weekend, the Rose, the only team to win both of their games this season against the Lunar Owls and the Phantom. Lunar Owls, Mist, Vinyl, and Phantom each split their games this weekend, and Laces held out of the win column at 0-2. We did have some Unrivaled matchup last Tuesday that we didn't get into as the Rose defeated the Vinyl and the Laces defeated the Phantom. And a pretty big storyline from that game was Benijah Laney Hamilton making her Unrivaled debut against with the Laces against the Phantom, literally just getting off the plane and putting up 23 points, shooting 59% from the field. And if that wasn't enough, she hit the game winner for the Laces on Tuesday. So that was an incredible performance and an incredible fun watch for Benijah Laney Hamilton. And speaking of incredible performances, I have 5 outstanding performers to give you this week. So here's my top 5. Number 5, Alicia Gray of the Lunar Owls, averaging, now this is all of the average points from the weekend of Unrivaled, averaging 23 points, 4 rebounds, 5 assists, and shooting 57% from the field. Number 4, I have Skylar Diggins-Smith of the Lunar Owls, having 24 points, 4 rebounds, 5 assists, and also shooting 57% from the field. Number 3, I have Ryan Howard from the Vinyl with 26 points, 4 rebounds, 2 assists, 3 steals, shooting 43% from the field and 45% from the 3, including a crazy game on earlier this week where Ryan Howard made 7 threes in that game, where shooting 54% from 3. So that's an incredible performance there from Ryan Howard. And then number 2, I didn't think I'd do it this season, if we're being honest, but I had to do this. Angel Reese, 22 points, 17 rebounds, 4 assists, and shooting 51% from the field. I mean, wow, that's an incredible job from Angel Reese. And number 1, I have Chelsea Gray, 26 points, 8 rebounds, 6 assists, shooting 46% from the field and 62% from 3. All right, a couple of takeaways from the weekend of games in Unrivaled. I gotta ask you, how good has Angel Reese been this weekend in Unrivaled? She has been so incredible this weekend, and the people are taking notice of it. She had a 22-point, 21-rebound game on Saturday to help beat the league best Lunar Owls and hand them their first loss of the season. And I tweeted this out on Twitter, and I posted it on my Bluesky at CW Talk Sports, at CWTALKS Sports. Working with Lisa Leslie may have been the best thing that happened to Angel Reese this offseason. And I really feel like her working with Leslie, and of course working on those layups, as Leslie said on Angel's Unapologetically Angel podcast, I feel like working with Leslie, all this does is really just heighten her ceiling. And as I mentioned at the top of the program, her and Cardoso going into year 2 and the improvements they're making really just make the sky better. And what Angel is doing and what she has the potential to do this season in the WNBA, she could silence some critics as we go into year 2. Now, a lot of people were making jokes about Angel and her missing those layups and getting that Angel Reese special and act like they were missing the shots as well too. But she has a tendency to silence critics. She has the potential to silence critics in year 2 in the WNBA. And I can't say this enough. Chelsea Gray. She is so sensational. I mean, my goodness. Chelsea Gray, I feel like, is one of the main reasons why the Las Vegas Aces did not leave the championship discussion despite their roster turnover. Because a healthy Chelsea Gray is one of the best players in the entire WNBA, bar none. She shoots lights out. Her decision making is incredible. And when she goes off, oh my goodness, she is poetry in motion. And she has definitely willed the Rose in the midst of this winning streak, who I thought were going to be in some trouble here and weren't really going to do much as we got late into the season. And she's made them into a serious title contender as we go ahead in the Unrivaled season. And speaking of trouble, I think the Laces are in some trouble here. They've lost 5 of their last 6 games, including the game that they had to forfeit against the Vinyl before the 1v1 tournament because they didn't have enough players to suit up. Now, mind you, they're still at 500. They're still in the 3-hole. But this is must-win territory now for the Laces, or we could be looking at a free-fall situation on our hands. Now, they play the Vinyl and the Rose, which, on paper, you would think would be winnable games. But like I said, the Rose are red hot, and the Vinyl, I mean, like I said, they should be able to win that game, but yeah, they're in a little bit of trouble here. And then of course we have the Vinyl, who are in the 4 hole. So, and then the Mist. I mean, time is pretty much running out on the Mist. I mean, I love Rakia Jackson. Incredible game yesterday, but time is certainly running out on the Mist, and time is certainly running out on the Phantom in this Unrivaled season. Well, folks, that will do it for the women's basketball rundown. Be sure to follow me on Twitter or X and on Bluesky at CW Talk Sports. That's CWTALKS Sports. Be sure to like, comment, subscribe, hit that notification bell to be notified of when I post again. And I will see y'all on the Sports Rundown tomorrow. As I announced yesterday on my Sports Rundown, we're going to be doing Sports Rundown on Mondays and Wednesdays, and we will be doing the Women's Basketball Rundown on Tuesdays and Fridays. So stay tuned for that, and I will see y'all the next time. Good night, everyone.